Уважаемые дамы и господа, просим вас занять места в зале. Сессия начнется через 5 минут. Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats. The session will start in 5 minutes.
Уважаемые дамы и господа, приветствуем вас
Dear ladies and gentlemen, we welcome you the discussion session, New Eco Standards in the Industry, Advantage or Burden. Good afternoon, dear colleagues. We're happy to see you here, and we're the last but not the least, because this topic is very important. Today we're going to discuss the provision for environmental safety and just about the world global trends about environmental management, what technology can be considered green and which are not. And we'll also be comparing these trends to the opportunities and possibilities that the railways have. My name is Alexey. I'm the editor-in-chief of publishing house Gudok. Let me introduce the participants today. First of all, Philippe Pegorier, President and General Director of Alstom Russia. Sergey Kobzev, Deputy Managing Director and Chief Engineer of JSC Russian Railways. Mikhail Rozhkov, Technical Director of JSC Transmashholding. Alexey Lapikov, Principal of Roland Berger. Alexander Petrunin, Deputy General Director of Federal Passenger Company. I think that it goes without saying how important the green technologies and energy saving and management of natural resources is so important. It has become a buzzword. If you watch the news, if you listen to the radio, or watch the TV, even you have seen a lot during the last couple of days. One of the deputies from the Environmental Party, their activities and become more visible, and their actions are motivated by real needs of the environment. And there are, of course, objective reasons to reduce the load on the environment due to the industrial breakthrough in many countries, and we see how quickly the Asian countries develop. It includes Africa as well, and we just had a Russia-Africa summit last week, and there was much said during that forum, and objectively there is a necessity for introducing of such environmental friendly technologies, and overall across industries they are ready and prepared for using and applying green technologies. And even a few years ago, that economically feasible thing like a green fuel wasn't even feasible a few years ago, and it is necessary to introduce those technologies. And the fourth element of this process is the preparedness of the consumers to use those energy-saving technologies, choosing from among different goods, and they oftentimes are inclined to purchase goods with the sticker that says that it's environmentally friendly, even if it's more expensive. And comparing the conditions both to the east and the west of the Atlantics, and both in Russia, we see that those technologies are in high demand, and this demand will gain its momentum in the future. Let me now give the floor to our panelists, and I'd like to ask a question to Monsieur Pegorier. We're talking about the electricity, switching to the electric power for railways. It's a guaranteed way for reducing the emissions into the atmosphere, and we understand it full well that this is not possible everywhere, and it's not always economically feasible, and that's why we need to look for alternatives and to look for replacements for traditional fuel used at the railways. What will become the new natural oil? What will be the energy source? What are the best world practices? I read the interview in today's issue of Gudok, and I in part already know the answer, but I would like you to go in more detail. It was a very good interview, and thank you for the opportunity to speak here today. In spite of the fact that this is the last session and of the forum and of the day. Nonetheless, this topic is the topic related to the future, and in a few forums from now, this topic will be talked about more often. Our company is the first one that is the manufacturer of Roland stock that produces locomotives which are hydrogen powered. And there is a saying in Russia, it's better to see once than to hear 100 times. And I'd like to show you a short video for you to enjoy.
То, может быть, чтобы прокомментировать, то вы видите, что это
To comment on this, it's actually based well, it runs on the hydrogen fuel elements. It's a combination of hydrogen and oxygen from the air that produces electricity, and thus providing the batteries with power. The only emission that it produces is some water. It's very clean. It's one of the cleanest. It doesn't replace the electrification of railways, but whenever the electric power is not available on railways and it's not economically feasible, and there is a choice to choose between 1 or 3 million euros of investments, this type of a train is able to replace the diesel locomotives. It's a pure alternative for diesel engine trains. And you all know that Alstom is a French company, and we have the biggest factory in the world, which is located in Germany. And we manufacture these locomotives in Germany. And the first contracts we have received orders. The first orders are from local railways in Germany. The first one was for Lower Saxon land, and the second was for Hesse. They ordered 27 such locomotives. And again, we think that this is the future, because it's within the context of the Paris Accord on climate, and it's very important because Russia just joined just a week ago joined the Paris Accord, and you know that we noticed that nowadays in the West, in France, and in Germany, in the northern countries like Scandinavian countries, the population wants to have green or clean transport. There is no mayor of a city that is can afford buying diesel buses, even in Russia. And I think that in a matter of a few years, the same will be for the management for the CEOs of the railways. There has to be done something about it. So this is our project, and it looks like an electric train. It's a format of an electric train, and you saw the figures of 80 kilometers per hour, and 140 kilometers per hour is its maximum speed, and the distance between fueling stations is about 1,000 kilometers, which is very comparable to diesel locomotives. So the manufacturing capacities should be developed because hydrogen is clean in both in its production and its consumption, and there are manufacturing processes that need to be launched. We already work with a German company that is developing, and that's what I wanted to tell you. And again, this is the future, and I think that Russia and the Russian railways having a large fleet of diesel locomotives and heat-run engines. Of course, it will not happen overnight, but gradually, Russia will transfer to this clean energy. Thank you. Thank you, Philippe. Thank you, colleagues. Allow me a couple of questions. As far as I understand, the locomotives that run on hydrogen, it's a highly technological production. In order to obtain electricity, those fuel cells are needed, and they are produced only in a few locations in the world, and they are themselves quite expensive. And hydrogen itself is more expensive than diesel fuel. In your opinion, when in Europe, let's narrow it down to just Germany, that has passed a whole range of so-called green laws. So when will the cost for domestic hydrogen locomotive trips or voyages will be equal to the standard diesel costs? Well, it's the public desire or the public will and the municipalities' desire, since diesel is still developing as technology, and quite naturally hydrogen as well. It repeats the history, so it just needs to be developed. So the production of hydrogen needs to develop first, not only for the railways, but also for other types of industry. And we think that in a matter of few years, maybe in 10 to 15 years from now, experts think that hydrogen-driven power will take up to 20-25% of the energy sector, not just railways, but in general. This is the energy of the future. And again, as in the case of any new developments or discoveries, when you just begin the manufacturing of that new material, if you watch TV programs, you go back in history and revisit and see how expensive the new technologies used to be. But again, we will be developing, because the Paris Accord will be implemented everywhere. We will not avoid it or escape it. It needs to be done. And another question. Correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm not a technical expert. I don't have a formal technical education, me either. But nonetheless, there is a product. It's a synthesis or a combustion product, byproduct. So it's CO2 and water. So it's just water that's it's emitted, because it's a combination of hydrogen and oxygen, air oxygen. There is no combustion taking place, and it's just washing the tracks with the water, because it's the only byproduct of the process. So there will be more grass along the way. So it's another technology to produce water for dry regions. And the last question, if you allow me. So you say water that is being used for watering the grassy ground. But I saw the video, and when the train is passing by, there is either steam or vapor coming out of it. That was hydrogen. I just like to add that it's in this this is being developed. Why we began this why we decided to start in Germany is because 60% of diesel locomotives are in circulation in Germany. SNSM asked us if, because they were ready to order SNCF, they have a good reputation, so asked for development of dual energy engines, both electric and hydrogen based. So if I understand it correctly, technically to unite both electrical power and hydrogen power, is it possible to do it together in one locomotive? Yes, technically it's feasible. Thank you very much. We'll go back to that topic of the hydrogen again during the discussion. Now I'd like to give the floor to Sergey Kobzev about how to manage to develop and the strategy of energy saving or natural resources saving in such a large-scale company like Russian Railways. You have to agree that introducing just hydrogen or any other fuel is not enough because the scale of the company obliges.
So I'd like to start my presentation from the saying that the topic is very wide, and by one or another way to change the phrase or a subject, how one of the characters from the movie mentioned, if you remember in this movie, which is called "And Place is Not Possible to Change," so there was a stolen fur coat. So how to explain if it was stolen or not? So you can easily to evaluate. It's not how many thieves are in the country, but how fast you're able to locate the thief and to bring back this fur coat to the client. So when we're talking about ecology, the main validity is how the big state, federal company, or just a private company, how they can stop distribution of the very harmful product or harmful exhaust from gases or emissions. So the human as an ideological machine is a kind of a mechanism which is using not only clean ecological products, it's using all kind of products. So therefore we are a very big company, 85,000 kilometers from Sakhalin to Kaliningrad. So on this picture you can see different characteristics of our brand, of our company, of our infrastructure. So here you can see criteria when we're talking about the nature utilization, nature use. So here I can say that we're moving in the direction of being very rational and have a maximum use of nature resources. Our main trend, our main point of application of forces is electrification of railways. So electric energy, where it comes from? It comes from the nuclear power stations, it comes from hydropower stations, from rivers, and also from burning of coal. So in this case, the localizations of emissions, if in one place we're burning coal, it's easier to make purification stations there and to clean the exhaust emissions. Instead, if we will have it spread all around locomotives which are running around the country and putting emissions in the air. So electrification is the step number one. Second, in our rolling stock, our main valuable material is gas. Gas as energy is available. Gas is a very high quality. When we do the utilization of gas, we're getting the energy and all the drive of our locomotives coming, if they're coming from the natural gas, then the emissions are very few and they're not so negative. So burning of gas has very little emissions. So the second trend of our long-term development program is investment and making our locomotives drive on natural gas motor fuel. So natural gas motor fuel is our second element. The third element, the third one is to use the energy, so-called pure energy, such as sun energy, energy from the earth, using solar panels, using some heat pumps, some specific buildings in the southern part of our country. They are already using this heat energy from the ground. So we won't say that it is free of charge energy, because you need to spend money on maintenance, on the development, on the infrastructure development, but still they're using the earth heat energy. So using these three approaches, we are trying to make the minimum harm, minimum ecological impact. So when we're minimizing our ecological impact to the environment, we don't have that many factories which are working with maintenance and maintenance of infrastructure, where we need some local purifying, local cleaning stations, when we need a closed circle water circulation. But in our company we have an ecological strategy. For us as a transport company, we were able to clearly answer challenges and social opinion that in the nearest 3 years we will be able to minimize, to bring it next to zero emission of water. So we will only be emitting water of the clean quality, which is adequate to all the rules and requirements. So what about the future? In the next 3-5 years period, we will work continuously with the engineering companies. So we will use different innovations, new technologies, and they will enable us to go even below the low allowable indicator of the dirtiness of water. So minimum permissible quantities. So this will enable us to follow all the principles of water use in the Russian Federation. What is the next element? The next element, which is up to date and very important and is a key issue, is the area where we already have the ecological damage. So that is our inherited places. So 40-50 years ago the technologies were not advanced, so they're not able to utilize all the leftovers and all the exhausts from the oil industry. So there are some wooden sleepers with creosote on them. There are some other wastes which are ecologically harmful. So because we are a responsible company, we want to take care of all those inherited polluted objects. So altogether there are about 60 of them. So they are structurized using specific technologies for the recultivation, to do the cleaning of them in the nearest future. By the year 2024 we have the program of there are investments delegated to this 15 of them we will clean so that they will be ecologically sound. And 19 of them will be decommissioned. So the next challenge, which was mentioned by Mr. Pegorier, here we're talking about the rolling stock. We want also to use gas, and what else? Our approach, and very serious challenging approach, the railway transportation, as any kind of transportation, it also causes a lot of vibration and noise. Today, railway it was constructed to link cities, to link settlements. So it's a very needed in transport infrastructure. But we have now new criteria. The society wants to have railway without noise. So from this point of view, we are also trying to support them. The concept is very interesting. We're working very hard with this problematic issue. So right now, through the tools and different approaches and innovations, we want to see the proposals which will help us to minimize, to bring next to zero noise, loudness from locomotives. Mainly it's from the locomotive and less from the electric trains. So we're talking not only about having seamless rails, but different construction even, so that all the noise and vibrations will be localized, not more than 10 meters away from the railway. It is a very challenging, technically hard. So a good solution would be a continuous welded railroad track, or even to have it underground. Then it would be only disturbing those people who are living under the ground, gnomes. But it's a colossal expenses. So at the moment the society is not ready to pay for that. So we need to find a compromise. So we need to find a solution which would be not so costly for people, even though it will be less comfortable for population. So if we're moving within the norms of federal law, then according to the requirements, we need to move all the people within the cities if there is no specific sound protection. So 400 meters from the railway, it has to be the area free from people, from citizens, just green grass, and that's it. But if we're talking about the big city, people, they require transportation, so we need and we have to do it some other way. We cannot relocate all those people who are living next to the railway stations. So what will be the solution? I will support Mr. Pegorier. Maybe during our next meeting, next forum, the topic of ecology will be looked thoroughly. So we not only should talk about wastes, waste disposal and emissions, we need to talk about the very comfortable environment for citizens. So here, of course, the solution for those challenges and those difficult tasks are needed to be thought after. So we are convinced that in the future we have to deal with that. We have discussed in our internal meetings how we see our future. What will be the preference of and priority of our railway transportation? First of all, it's ecological cleanness, comfort, low noise. So then we will be able to bring the railway right away to your house, to your doorstep. So, talking about the topic which was discussed earlier, what are the other alternative ways of the energy sources? So, talking about the alternative energy sources, if you remember how the Earth was created and where do we live? We live and we have few constants, few physical constants. There are about 10 of them. We all know about this golden card and so on. So one of the elements of those constants is the law about the energy, constant energy. So if we want to live, we need 2,800 calories if you are an asket. So we are all quite well-bodied. So probably we need about 4,000 calories. And this is all energy. So where this energy comes from, we don't care. But we use this energy to carry out some useful activity. So to move electric train, we need, for example, 5 megawatts. So I need to get those 5 megawatts from somewhere as electric power, as kilowatts. If we're talking about the hydrogen engines, so then I need to carry out some chemical processes, and then I still need to get the same 5 megawatts, and then to charge batteries with them, and then to use this energy from the batteries. So this is the challenge. What is the cost of those 5 megawatts? So are you ready to buy it or not for our transport? The answer is we have made our choice. We have signed together with the company Transmashholding, with the state federal corporation Rosatom, an agreement. According to this agreement, we are actively participating and investing in development of the specific fuel elements. So these special fuel cells. So as we have seen on this movie, they train with the 3 cars. We don't need too much energy, but if we're talking about a cargo carrier, then we need 5 megawatts. So how many fuel cells do you need? Just imagine that. So for us, it is a challenge. We need to find new solutions, new technical solutions. How in a very local train to put in a cost-effective fuel cells. So we're ready to pay or not. What's the answer? The answer was given by Greta Thunberg in United Nations about the green technologies, and she was telling us that we need, and there is a Rubicon where we have to pay, otherwise we will start to go backwards. From the transport infrastructure with the city, where we stopped in traffic jams, when the speed is very low, the cheapest will be using horses. But we're not going to use horses in Moscow. Just imagine how many horses we need in Moscow in the central part. Then it's a different kind of ecology for the horse-propelled vehicles. So the answer is different. Are we ready? Are we ready to find another solution for energy? To collect in the city only positive energy and to get rid of this harmful exhausts. So our position is so that in the future the railway is not only a solution for transport, it's also a solution for our clients. It has to be ecologically friendly transport which is carrying out the minimum harm to the nature. So the digits what we have, and which you can see on this slide, we are evaluating them as very modest. During this year we have gained additional knowledge. We have gained additional understanding what technologies are available in our work in this particular sphere. For us, the figure of 18% decrease of emissions in the air and less polluted water, we're saying that it's not a very ambitious figure. We need to think and to change them and to implement that strategy. In the next several months, we will try to build up a kind of a program of our cooperation with the producers of trains, with the world society, to reach those goals.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Sergey. Allow me to ask you just one question. The environmental dictate is becoming an economic reality. First in Germany, the Green Party used to say, well, let's replace our heat power stations by the wind powered stations and windmills. But nowadays, even those windmills are a threat to underground living beings. But for you, as a representative of the state company, Russian Railways, where is this reasonable balance between the reduction of load on the environment and your direct business objectives? I'd like to answer this in an unusual way. The cost of goods is defined when the purchase has taken place. So at that very moment, the goods are what they are worth. The other thing is our expectations. It may cost cheaper or more expensive, but our expectations are our hypotheses, basically. But from a standpoint of how the Russian railways what kind of position should they take in terms of efficiency, availability, and environmentally friendliness. So this is a very important and state-related question. It would be very unreasonable to state that today we will be only taking care of the environment and not taking care of business. It's wrong. It would be wrong. We are in the transportation and logistics business, first of all, and we are responding to the demand of the population in their travels and relocation. We work on that first, but at the same time, we prioritize our work that it should be accompanied by improvements to make the environment better. And if the society, if the population is ready to pay for those extra benefits, our objective as a transportation agency would to spend that money and still do our business, so that we could actually avoid reproach from the next generation without actually spoiling or harming the nature and the environment where our infrastructure is located. So this is one thing, and another thing is would be more philosophical. Every 30 to 40 years, and in some cases it's every 100 years, there are new technological discoveries and solutions, and what seems unaffordable or too expensive today, in a matter of 20 to 30 years, it will become affordable. We're holding in our hands our mobile devices. The technology is 15 to 20 years old. It's a mobile device that is very similar to a personal computer, and we trusted all of our lives and our activities to mobile devices. Women and men, they react differently to when they lose their mobile devices. And women, for example, they start panicking because communication is gone. You cannot call anybody anymore. So from the environmental point of view, we as a company make it the first priority that these requirements are being formulated by the general population, by the society. And God forbid, I won't say things like, let's kill all the underground creatures. No, God created the world the way it is. And I'm just saying that we as humans in this world, we need to think about ourselves first, how to protect and preserve our life, our form of life, and the beauty of the nature around us. It's the element of the biosphere, no more, no less. But we have a small difference from the rest of the world. We're Homo sapiens. We're reasonable beings, and we can choose what to do. And we are at the top of the food chain, right? We're at the top of the food chain. Yeah, we could discuss that too, but let's leave it. Let's think about it as a pleasant illusion. Thank you very much, Sergey. I would support you completely in terms of the technologies that we're discussing, whether they are beneficial or not. But in a matter of a few years, some things and some technologies will be so outdated that we will be laughing at those technologies as ancient. There used to be engines that had only 2 horsepower. Now it's not even considered serious. I'd like to give the floor to our next panelist, Mikhail Rozhkov, and to talk about what the industry can do nowadays, what will be our next step. Let's remember the green technologies topic within the transport manufacturing industry. Good evening, dear colleagues. I'd like to begin my speech with a few remarks. The first is the higher the efficiency of the type of transportation, the lower are its harmful emissions or byproducts. I'd like to note one of the most pleasant things is that the railway transport is the most efficient in that respect, and emissions are 4 times lower than compared to the automotive or aviation, air transportation types. And the second note is that it would be wrong to consider the vehicle or the means of transportation itself. It would be wise to consider the whole life cycle of of transportation, which includes the manufacturing of fuel and energy resources, then commissioning, and then decommissioning. And here we need to understand what we're talking about. If we're talking about within the context of the Paris Accord, we're talking about the carbon trace that we leave, and coming back to the hydrogen as and with zero emissions while using it. But today's manufacturing of hydrogen as a resource is much more harmful than diesel production. It's much more, if many times more harmful. And if we consider this in the format of just being used as a fuel in a vehicle, it would be wrong. And a short remark about your question to Mr. Pegorier, when hydrogen will become the competitor for diesel fuel, I'll answer like this. Today, the cost of 1 kilogram of hydrogen is more than $10. The hydrogen will become more profitable when its cost of production will reach $3. So this is roughly what the reality is. While responding to the question about what technologies, what current technologies or the current industry is looking at, we're implementing a whole range of products, and Sergey Alexeyevich mentioned the signed agreement about the developing and building a hydrogen train, which would be an analog to Belinda. And from this perspective, I'd like to tell you one good thing is that a week and a half ago in St. Petersburg, there was a trial run for a hydrogen-powered tram, which was only built using Russian technologies, except for films that we use because they are not produced in Russia. So this is the trend where we see the future, and we're entering the agreement with Rosatom because it is the platform which will be able to develop the technologies which will lead to energy efficiency in manufacturing hydrogen and all the way to the clean production. We believe that we will be able to build that production facility without emissions of hydrogen or carbohydrates. And the second reason why we believe in short perspective is hybrid technologies. It's diesel engines and battery combined engines that will reduce the diesel emissions radically, especially if it's using contact batteries. One of the prototypes we have shown in Sherbinka, it's a diesel battery powered locomotive, and within the framework of the agreement with Russian Railways and Rosnano, we're building a railway station in Russia. That's about it about the technologies. We believe in hybrid units. We believe that neither hydrogen or battery-based systems, especially for the long-distance machinery, the batteries have not grown up to match the demand. In order to provide for long-distance runs for locomotives, we would need 18 carriages worth of batteries, and it is not efficient, to say the least. The same goes for the hydrogen. So at this stage of development, we're talking about local maneuvering locomotives to replace diesel locomotives. So it's about a small load rolling stock. First of all, thank you, Mikhail. let me ask you a few questions. So hybrid technologies were widely adopted in automotive industry. Every single brand has its own range of hybrid models, and it doesn't surprise anybody anymore. This technology has been used for a long time. Could you please clarify? There is many people without special, specific formal technical education. So why? How does this hybrid technology save energy? Because the first law of thermodynamics talks about the preservation of energy. So while changing modes of energy, there are the opposite sides of energy resources. They accumulate the unused energy levels. What do you think about it? So it's only one side to the story. Let's consider the local maneuvering machinery. On standby, diesel locomotives, for example, work for in standby mode for over 70% of their time, and it's the same diesel engine that is used for moving cargo from point A to point B, and energy could be used for warming up other systems within the locomotive, and it will reduce the spending of energy radically, multifold, and that would give us an additional environmental effect. And the second question, you mentioned the first hydrogen-powered tram. It was an experimental trial run in St. Petersburg. We were talking about this new technology which hasn't been adopted yet. In what area, in your opinion, whether public transportation or private transportation vehicles, where hydrogen will appear first? Hydrogen has already appeared in the automotive transportation. It was the first trend there, recent trend, and any new technology will go through the firstly through the mass production, like automotive industry, private vehicles, automotive transportation. It's being developed actively in Europe. It's a very influential force, and Japan is one of those forces. And if they succeeded to avoid using coal, and it has become a national Japanese project transferring to new energy sources. If we talk about railways, hydrogen as well as battery-powered machines is still an area of well, this is the area where electric passenger trains is prevailing. Right now, the hydrogen and battery technology are not ready for that sector. Thank you. Dear colleagues, it just so happened that we talk about much about hydrogen, and it's not by accident. And as just Mr. Pegorier said, in a couple of years from now, may I add something? Concerning diesel fuel, it all depends on the will of the government and authorities. What's happening in France and Germany and other countries through the Ministry of Finances, it increases the fees or taxes diesel, so that the use of diesel will become economically inefficient. So I agree with you completely. I'd like to join the discussion here. I understand that you may use other terms, but in your native language it would sound differently. The authorities find tools and instruments which allow them to implement projects. Within the Russian Federation, the authority is choosing and selecting tools that allow the country to transfer from one ecologically unfriendly fuel to another that are more ecologically or environmentally efficient, and it allows us to hear from the population and general public as far as the technologies implementation, and in order to support new technologies and hydrogen powered machines. And we have such a tool as the Ministry of Industry that is being subsidized and it subsidizes new initiatives as well as the multiple funds within the Russian Federation's budget. So it all depends on how the strictly or how rigidly this issue is being presented by the general public. We have a globe to take care of, and we now have more possibilities to provide cleaner atmosphere than before, and we are actually we stick to the general and universal human values and the Paris Accord in particular. Well, you have to agree that hydrogen has another advantage to it. It can be used whenever it's used as a fuel. It can be used in China, for example. It imports oil, natural oil, from the Arabian Peninsula, from Russia, and from the South American continent. Now, China is among the leaders of among the countries who are switching to hydrogen as fuel for automotive sector. They want to produce over 1 million vehicles, hydrogen-powered vehicles by 2030. So these are quite realistic plans. I'd like to give the floor to our next speaker, Alexey Lapikov, and let's go back to the global trends using alternative energy sources in transportation.
So quite recently we have carried out a project for partnership between the federal state, Shift to Rail was the name, and the private sector. So first is to calculate the life cycle of the locomotives on the hydrogen fuel. So then to check out what are the alternatives and to find out what are the criteria for different directions with existing technology, existing costs. The locomotive on the hydro-powered will be more efficient. So what are the results? What are the conclusions? The hydrogen is cheaper than the electrically powered train. Yeah, that's true. And it is €0.5 more expensive than the diesel locomotive. So that was the first big conclusion. Second conclusion is if we look on those areas in Europe, what are the forecasts? With existing technologies, about 20% by the year 2030, there will be a rolling stock consisting of hydrogen-powered trains. So if we look on the next picture, next slide shows that even now there are 3 different directions where the hydrogen-powered locomotives are more interesting than other source of alternative fuel. So when you're talking about this motor maneuvering trains in those area where there is a low intensivity. What by the low intensivity I'm saying that the time frame between the moving of trains is less than 30 minutes. 30 minutes to 1 hour. Then in this area it's more efficient to use the hydrogen-powered locomotives. So this conclusion tells us that for some regions where it's not possibility to carry out electrification because investment would be too high, then for them it would be more interesting to use this hydrogen technology. So for the maneuvering locomotives, it's only when we're talking about distances not more than 100 kilometers and when they are constantly in use, when there is no lag. So when we're using the lot of maneuvering, because we know that quite often they're just idle, then it's not economically sound. So about the transportation of cargo, then it's not that easy. Then we need to invest further in the technologies. The technologies are not efficient enough. What are the general conclusions? So according to my opinion, there are some positive results. There are federal resources and tools how to speed up the process or how to stimulated, and they should be in active use. Thanks a lot. A question to you. So you have calculated several models, several approaches. So when you carried out the research work, how did you evaluate the production of the hydrogen in the world? Because I don't have exact figures, but as far as I know, the production of hydrogen in the world is quite low. So if by instant we will need a lot of hydrogen cars, locomotives, and other means of transportation, then there will be not enough fuel, there will be lack of fuel, there will be deficit of it. So in the long term, how do you think? So the hydrogen can be produced by two different methods, two different types. First is electrolysis, second is the steaming reform of the product. So there are two ways, and this steam reforming chemical industry, these chemical factories, it's just a byproduct for them, because the company in some cases are just burning, or they just throwing it out in the atmosphere as exhaust. So we understand that a lot of different brands and companies are doing the research work in this direction. So Rosatom is one of the leading company in this market, in this part. So they are one of the leaders in the production cost, because they have the technology for hydrogen production. So we also checked how much of the hydrogen is just wasted or thrown as exhaust. In the electrolysis, the exhausts, they're about 200 grams per kilowatt. When we're talking about the steam reforming, then it's about the same standard, about 11 kilos of exhausts for the production of 1 kilo of hydrogen. Still, if you have seen the previous slide, there were some figures that in principle, even with these indicators, still hydrogen is more ecologically sound than the alternative means of energy which existing now. Okay, so when we're talking about the hydrogen fuel, we are forgetting that we also need some costs to utilize those existing already now, the trains and the diesel engines, diesel locomotives. This is understandable. This is one of the obstacles. Of course, the owners, they have a lot of diesel locomotives. They have their financial breakdown. So they're not ready to just get rid of or dispose all the diesel locomotives. They want to work them all the time till the end, and only after that do the recycling. So yes, this is a factor which slows down the process, that's for sure. So dear colleagues, we have talked about the technological and technical revolution, usage of a new fuel, using of new engines and new drives. So to carry out ecological standards, and we also need to have a revolution in our mindset. So therefore, I'd like to give the floor to Alexey Petrunin. Alexey Petrunin, how the Federal Transport Passenger Company is doing the simple approach. How do you work with this hard waste, solid waste? All this waste, how we dispose them, how we do ecologically sound disposal. So here we need to work with people, with their mindset. What will be the way in solution? So to reduce the stress on atmosphere, we do need to renew our rolling stock, of course. And I'd like to mention that we're using the electrical heating systems. So we're changing those stoves and those heaters which we had in the past, which were working on coal. We're also using special pellets for heating system. But I wanted to talk about a different issue altogether, considering that in our industry, in our factories, we have about 100,000 tons of solid waste. So how do we utilize them? How we'll dispose them? How we do the recycling? 60% of those wastes are coming from the passenger carrier trains. And then here we're talking about plastic, metal, food, and other stuff. So until the year 2018, we had an agreement and contract, and then the utilization was carried out by a special factory, because the norms and regulations have changed. So at the moment we have about 70 contracts with the regional waste disposal companies. So of course they're doing their recycling of the products and what we're throwing out and utilizing in the specific recycling polygons. Part of it could be recycled and used once again. So that's why we have made a decision that when we do the construction work for our new rolling stock, we will create a specific tanks so that right in our trains we can separate wastes so that plastic will be in one container and paper and food in other. So the rolling stock, what we already have, already consists of 330 cars. So all of them are equipped with these separate waste disposal bins. So as the situation is going on now, so in the year 2024, in our rolling stock we'll have 3,500 double story and single compartments carriers. So of course, yeah, the result is quite positive. So this year in July on the St. Petersburg Economic Forum, we have discussed already this issue with the Russian ecological company. So we have signed down the memorandum of understanding. So we decided to carry out a pilot project. So this pilot project will show what will be the result, what is the economic effect. So we have a working group. We have prepared the terms of reference for the rolling stock. About the public awareness building program. So the pilot project is done. So the results are quite positive. And about the possibility of the recycling of the material, specifically plastic waste. So all the plastic wastes, which was separated from the main household waste, was recycled, and it was done in the region of Tver, in Tverskoy factory. So for us, as the owners, the volumes, they have decreased significantly. And when we're talking about the cost of the cubic waste, the cost of the cubic waste decreased twice. It's only 50% of the cost. So on the base of this work, we're carrying out our work, continuously planning to carry out the terms of reference to find out the operator who will be responsible for carrying out an utilization of wastes, of household wastes, make a selective waste disposal with the future recycling. So if the result will be positive, if this technology is livable, then we will distribute and scale up this experience through other regions of Russian Federation. So talking about this plastic, what are they doing with this plastic in this Tverskoy factory? Why do they need it? So they are making some plastic glasses and cutlery. It's also possible to do all kind of goods which are required for the market. So we have been supported. Our idea was sound, and now we were just working on development of this technology further. So collecting of waste, of household waste, it is an important issue, of course. And what else do you have when you're talking about recycling? What are your future plans? Not just a selective waste disposal, but what are other ideas for the development? So, talking about the rolling stock, it is not a secret that in this specific restaurant cars we're using single or disposable glasses and cutlery, and we need to work with that issue as well, so that we will have this special cutlery that will be easy to process, that it will be easily recycled, or that they can have a second use, so one way or another, but it will be aimed to deliver the secondary product at the cheaper cost. So dear colleagues, there's 1 hour already has passed. I think that we had a very productive discussion. I got some new ideas and interesting approaches. I'm pretty sure it was quite useful for you too. So we have a prepared voting, a poll. This voting or poll you can do through the application. I'm pretty sure that you have already downloaded this application, MIOU. So here on this slide it is. So are you ready to invest in green technologies? That is the answer, the question. And you have 4 options. Please vote. Check the PR code on the screen. So then if you photo it and scan it with your telephone, then you'll get to the page. So 4 possible answers. I'm ready for the recycle if I'll get some bonuses from that. Yes, if I will have some money from separate investors. The last answer is no, there are no green technologies which are ready to implement already now. It will be anonymous voting. We just only want to get the general opinion. Do we need to implement green technologies at all? Or maybe our audience, they have a different opinion. So I'm very grateful for all our speakers. I'm wishing to all of you to have a pleasant evening. Unfortunately, the weather leaves much to be desired, but I'm hoping that it will stabilize in the future. And I would like to remind you one more time that beginning of the next year, in the year 2020, from 26th to 27th of March, the magazine Gudok will carry out a railway congress. It's a traditional event. We're welcoming all of you there. We will be talking about the integration of our Russian railways with the European railway system and network. We will be talking about green technologies as well. So please put on a film. Рад анонсировать второй конгресс, который состоится 26.
We are happy to welcome 600 high-level experts. International top speakers will debate and discuss current and future challenges facing rail transportation, as well as fostering sustainable development and emerging technologies.
Второй международный конгресс, март 26-27. So we're hoping that in March in Vienna the weather will be wonderful. So here we can see the results of our poll. Are you ready to invest in green technologies? So I was expecting a different result, but what do we see here? Surprisingly, very pleasant result. Yes, we're ready. If I'm considered to be a responsible leader, I'm ready to invest. So, the proposed answers are very interesting, but it's not just an ambitious leader who is ready to invest. I know that at the moment, with our system of education for our top managers and leaders, this question goes without saying. If you're a leader, you has to be responsible, and it has to be. You need to have this environmentally friendly vision. Why do we work with green technologies? There are human valuables, and there are instruments which are developed by our government. And today, as a company, as a Russian railways, and it was mentioned already by my colleagues that we're working on international market. We have the lowest energy costs for the transportation of a cargo per kilometer. So we have the smallest credit rate and so on. So we have tools from the government which stimulating us to carry on work on the green technology sector. So we need to continue this work, then we will get also economic bonuses provided to us by our federal government. Yes, if I will receive some bonuses from the federal laws, they are developed so that the potential risks of penalties and responsibilities will be close or linked to those activities which you need to do the recultivation of land or care or build up some purifying stations. So I'm building up a factory. I'm building them and I'm spending money, but I'm spending less than I would have to pay if I will get inspectors who will make a penalty for me. So that inefficient production is very costly. And those are the federal tools, and they are stimulating us to move in a good, ecologically friendly direction. So before this session, we were talking that it has to be an internal feeling, internal motivation of our company to become ecologically friendly, efficient brand, because this is our market priority, because this is our leadership. So it's not only the federal tools, but this is our profitability. So the winner will be the one who has a less harmful and more ecologically friendly production line. Thanks a lot. Yes, that is correct. I agree with you fully. So indeed, we all need to live and understand that Russian railways are working and are leaders in the ecologically sound sector. So we need to keep this leadership, this share in the market, ecologically friendly market. Dear colleagues, thanks a lot. I'm grateful to you. Let's complete our session.